What's up, guys? Welcome into All Tied Up. It's a snowy day. I don't know where you are. It's kind of snowy where I'm at in Columbia, South Carolina. I don't know if it's snowing where you are,
It very
but
much is.
okay. I've been listening to Young Jeezy all day just to get into the mood. Snowman. Three of you will get that reference, I think. But Clint,
I'm
how the
not
hell
one of
are
them.
you?
I'm good. Yeah. Snow's been fun. We're not as good as Carson Beck, right? The Pursuit of Happiness. Is that what we're calling this?
Dude, so here's the thing. People are gonna hate on him for just being in love. I tell you what, like
I think
people.
that
What?
I feel like they're good. I feel like they're hating on him because he wasn't good after he fell in love. Like, did it? I mean, how has his performance been affected by
Dude, I'll
love?
tell you right now. Maybe Carson Beck has a future in stand-up comedy because when I was good at stand-up comedy, and I know there's gonna be some angry man just shaking his fist at the clouds right now, be like, "You've never been funny." Um, But when I was at my best in stand-up comedy, it was when I was at my worst as a person, and I was like most unhappy. The moment I got happy, the moment I was like, probably not gonna do stand-up that much longer. Did it for like
That
11
yeah.
years, and then I started dating Allie, and it was like, I don't know. Now I'm just like I'm just full of
Everything's not as
dad
funny.
jokes. Yeah, and puns and stuff. It's just like that's where like, most of my humor is now. But dude, Beck is like, he did play worse once he started publicly dating her for sure. I don't disagree with that. So maybe that's where part of it's from. Here's the thing I was going to, I'm telling you off air, it's a perfect move for him. Like, it's a genius move. It's what Cam Ward did last year. Cam Ward came in and was like, I'm going to go to the NFL draft at Washington State. Like, he might be a second, third round pick. And he's like, you know what? I'll go to Miami. Now he's a first round pick, like a lock. He's played great. He might be a top 5 pick. You look at we saw Miami's schedule. We talked about it during like the playoff arguments and stuff. You look at Carson Beck, and this is what I wrote to you. Here's his numbers against unranked opponent. I'm sorry, versus ranked opponents in the SEC. Now, listen, 13 games at Georgia, 7 or 6 of them against ranked opponents, like almost half, right? So 60% completion, 7.1 yards per attempt, only 246 yards passing per game, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. How about against unranked opponents, which is what he is going to face almost exclusively at Miami? 68.8% completion percentage. So that's up 8.7%. 8.4 yards per attempt. So up over almost a yard and a half per attempt. Up 40 yards per game. And then 21 touchdowns, 5 picks. Like it just makes sense.
Yeah, they're gonna attract some receiving options with this move. I mean, a lot of people is going to be able to point to the receiving talent in Georgia after losing Brock Bowers, losing Lad McConkey. Guys just didn't really grow or pan out how they were supposed to. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about this, but
yes, we are.
He's no longer the SEC's problem. That's also a kind of a joke. I'm not saying he was a problem at all. He wasn't a problem for Alabama back in was it September? No, it was October.
September
but anyway,
28th, and then also last year in December. Like that's the thing Saban brought up so casually on game day, where he was like, "We saw in that SEC championship game, if you get him off his mark and you can make him move his feet, he's a different quarterback." And I remember him saying that, like, well, it's easy to say that when you got Chris Braswell and you got Dallas Turner and you got all those guys, and it's like, oh, Saban knows what he's talking about.
Like, he might know it. He might know a thing or two about football. So Alabama's got a lot going on in the transfer portal. Keelon Russell just arrived on campus. Let's start with that, man. Where are you at with this quarterback battle?
I don't love the picture he put on social media. We got to work on that. Right off the bat. He was like getting into town, like for move-in day, and he's going 89 miles an hour. It's like let's work on that. You're an 18-year-old kid, so I know you didn't know it. Like you just
no. You're upset about that because then Georgia fans can make fun of Alabama after you've been ragging all the Georgia people for how fast their players go.
So you were upset. Get there safely, and I want him to be the quarterback next year. That's what I want more than anything. Where I'm at with the quarterback battle, it's so intriguing, Clint. I think that you're the perfect person to talk to about it because you were so blatantly wrong about it last time. And that is so like in 2020, you're in the situation where you have Mac Jones coming in after he had been on the bench for 3 years. Then you have this all-world freshman. What's crazy about Keelon Russell is this. He starts out 123 going in the country going into last season 4-star. This is not some victim of a Bama bump, as idiot Auburn fans will tell you. But he gets up to a 4-star. He goes through spring camps. He wins the Elite 11, and he becomes a 5-star. And then it turns into not only is he a 5-star, he finished the year as the number 2 player in the country, and it's because of what he did in competition and put on tape. And so you look at Bryce Underwood, who got all the notoriety. You just go one down, and Keelon Russell is the next guy, not only in 247, but also the composite ranking across all platforms. Like the issues you have now where you didn't have with Bryce. Like, remember, Bryce came in, and he tells that story on social media after he gets drafted. He was like, yeah, during COVID especially, I was trying to make some extra money, so I was door dashing and driving for Uber Eats. Like, that's not going to be a problem here for Keelon Russell. But my initial perception of it is love to see Ty Simpson get a shot at being the starting quarterback after the time he's put in at the university, and also being a vaunted, highly ranked recruit. I also don't know, in this day and age of NIL and transfer portal era, are you going to be able to keep a guy like Keelon Russell on the roster if he sits for a year?
How many big name quarterbacks have we seen transfer after a year if they didn't play?
I feel like all of them. No, he did not.
Julian Sayin, is he heading somewhere else?
He's at Ohio State. But he was at Bama.
Arch Manning, how's he doing? Is he sticking around?
Yeah. How about Dante Moore?
Yeah. Yes.
How about Malachi Nelson?
Correct.
How
there's
about
actually Joe.
Joe Mama. Boom.
Okay. Thought we were talking about the R&B artist. I was like, when did he play quarterback?
Stutter.
But if you actually go through the list, the last the top 5 in the last 2 years, excuse me. I actually posted this, but I'm not going to go through and find it. It will take me a minute. But actually, there's not as much movement as you would think that there would be. Like, Aaron Nolan was one, but that was not surprising considering they brought in Julian Sayin right after they signed him. I guarantee you, he was like, man, this is bull crap. When he decided to go to Ohio State, and then immediately after he's kind of locked in, they're like, hey, we're going to bring in this Julian Sayin kid. Hey, we're bringing in Will Howard, a transfer portal guy. And we got a returning player that's going to be a part of that competition as well. So that wasn't surprising, but I think it's actually a lot lower of a rate than you would think.
I would hope so.
I'm
saying that based out of concern and like fear, right? So, like, this is one of the reasons why it's always great to do the show with you, is because you will react with like logic, and reason, which is something I rarely do, and so that also makes sense. I get that.
Well, and a lot of people feel the same way you do, and there's nothing wrong with that, because it does feel like that's the era that we're in. I actually am. So last year, DJ Lagway, he split time. So that was, at least he was getting playing time. That wasn't surprising. But Julian Sayin, actually, now that I'm looking at it, 2024 did have quite a few transfers. Year before, Jackson Arnold ended up sticking around after he sat for a year. Now, granted, he transferred a year later after being the starter, ironically enough.
Yeah, true.
But there actually are, now that I'm looking at it, there are guys who stick around. There are also guys who transfer. But I think that the only concerning part that you would have on that front would be how well, if Ty Simpson wins the job, is Ty Simpson doing? Like, is he doing good enough to keep the job for not only 2025, but then move on to the NFL? Or is he doing a good enough job where it's like he's probably going to remain the starter, but he's not going to go to the NFL after 2025 because they'll still have another year of eligibility? And so if you're viewing it as a 2-year thing, not many quarterbacks outside of Arch Manning are willing to sit for multiple years. And that's what I will say. So I understand the concern there. I don't think it's crazy. But I agree with you, like the 2020 approach and just how, it was different. Bryce was at a disadvantage because of COVID. Like, he didn't really have the ability to have a spring. He didn't have the ability to kind of go ahead and get on campus, get around his receivers, throw a bunch, do your typical stuff going in. that certainly affected that competition. So it is a little bit different, but the main difference to me is just people had more to go on with Mack. And granted, they were taking some of that, like that 2019 Iron Bowl, and using that against him as a reason why he shouldn't.
Right.
But you also had seen him play a lot of really good football, including that 2019 Iron Bowl, which I will say from now until the end of time. So it is a little bit of a difference, but it does feel like that it's like a lot of people are wanting the new shiny toy and Bryce Young, and just he's a phenom, incredible player. Keelon, obviously, phenom, incredible player. But you've got this guy who's been around for a while, and who the coach, there's a reason he's sticking around. I'll put it that way. The coaching staff's going to give him the opportunity. And I will say this. A lot of people are like, oh, thank goodness the coaching staff doesn't approach it like some fans are, where it's like, you think Ty Simpson should be the starter because he stayed loyal when he stuck around.
Yeah.
No one that I know is saying that. I mean, granted, I'm sure there are people who are. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying because he was loyal, you give him the first opportunity, every chance that you can, to allow him to be the quarterback. And the reason,
which is what they did for Milrow.
100%, yeah.
Right.
And the reason that you do that, the reason that is important, is you want to encourage that behavior from other people. This is a transfer portal world. Guys are bailing. The ones who do stick around and do develop, at a certain point, you need to give Keon Keeley every opportunity to win a starting job, because he has earned that through his commitment to stay when everybody else is bailing and leaving. So, with Ty Simpson, it's like, if you don't do that, these other players are going to be like, Ty sat around waiting for his turn, and, could have gone elsewhere, could have got the NIL money, could have been the starter, could have got the notoriety, all those things. He stayed loyal, and that all that did was he just continued to sit on the bench, and then they waited to get somebody else in there, and then they immediately gave that player every opportunity to win the job. I think it should be a quarterback battle. I think the best players should play. Mm-hmm. I'm 100% on board with that. But anybody that I know, or at least this is my approach, and I will tell anybody, maybe if they feel differently and they think you should go ahead and name Ty the starter because he was loyal, I will say I don't agree with that at all. It's just giving him the first opportunity. I think that's the right way to go about it.
Well, look at it like this, too. The situation in 2020 could not have worked out in a more ideal fashion for Alabama, not only the fans, but also the players and the program, right? Like Mac Jones came in. It wasn't like Mac Jones had a Jared Coker type season, or even a Blake Sims type season, which is like a great season, 3,400 yards, and you come in and get your shot to start, and like, this is for Sims, and you put up like all these like great numbers. Dude, Mac Jones comes off he's in the following year where Joe Burrow lights the world on fire and has arguably the greatest season in the history of college football. Mac Jones beats his completion percentage. Mac Jones has a better passer rating. Like Mac Jones, like he had one of the best seasons in college football history. It just so happened that it was in 2020, so people want to discredit it sometimes. But the way he was with Waddle, the way he was obviously with Devonta, you had Najee Harris on the team, and like having Bryce be able to, like, having the luxury of having the number one player in the country be able to sit a year is huge. And you had a kid that there's so many moving parts to that, where it's like, it wasn't like Mac Jones had a 63% completion percentage. He was 78%, right? Like he was incredible. And you also had a backup who had a level head as a freshman that was like, this is where I want to be, and this is where I know what's like in store for me. I'm sure that those conversations have already happened with Keelon Russell. Like he wants to start. Every competitor would, as like from day one. I totally get that. But hopefully you have got a kid that's grounded. And I'm not saying he is or isn't or anything in between. I don't know. Like I'm just saying, from an ideal situation, hopefully you got a kid that's grounded that understands, like, hey, like a majority of the players that end up being very successful in college aren't guys that started for 4 years, aren't guys that started for 3 years and then went pro. Like a majority of players that like that end up in the NFL, it's not like all these, like, not every single one of them is a story. It's like, from day one, I was the starter and here we go. Like, so I think that being able to see the big picture of things is something that they're going to have to reset. Like, and I mean the big picture of college football. Like, you're going to have to reset that for players, because the grass isn't always greener. And going to chase money and like, dude, the Malachi Nelson thing is the one that's most surprising. It's a kid that went to USC as a 5-star in that Nico class where they had all these high-ranked 5-stars, right? And then he goes to Boise State, doesn't start, and then now he's somewhere else that I can't remember where, but it's like a smaller school, I feel like. But that's I think one of the things you have to communicate to Keelon Russell too is you're a generational type of talent on paper, right? Like, and we have zero concerns with how great of a quarterback you can be. You're also going up against a guy, Ty Simpson, who was a 5-star. Like, it's a really good, talented quarterback. He hasn't had a chance to start yet, but I'm hoping we can just see 2020 and 2021 like repeated for a number of reasons, not just because of the quarterback situation, but obviously they won a natty in one of those years and played for one or the other. But like, it's just an interesting situation that is in the very, very beginning stages of seeing how it plays out. So it's like, I'm fascinated to see how it goes, and I'm so excited that Keelon Russell's on campus.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows I'm a huge fan, and I have said that I feel like he's one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever come to Alabama.
Yeah.
Period. And I think he's got the right stuff mentally. When you look at quarterbacks, whether really this is, I mean, if you got like a true freshman in high school, I'm sure this is the case. It's just, having a true freshman starter is somewhat rare, I think, on that level. I think it gets more common the higher levels you go. Like, you get more true freshman starters on the college level. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But you get more rookie starters on the NFL level than you would on the college level. But what I will say is a lot of that is through pressure. Like, if you draft a quarterback super high, there's this immense pressure to get him into the lineup. The fans want him. Typically you're drafting high or in that position because your franchise hadn't been very good. You're trying to put butts in the seats, build some excitement. But like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Bryce Young got benched and then he came out the other side better.
Right.
I think that the pressure of being the number one pick, I mean, there was never even a quarterback competition. It wasn't like they waited until the last second to name him the starter. They drafted him and then pretty much said he's starting. Right. That is a ton of pressure coming out the gate. Him getting to sit when he got benched for multiple games, start getting a feel for the game. Like, it's like Keelon Russell. If you throw him out there, he's never been adjusted or acclimated to a live game in college football. Things are firing everywhere. Yeah. You don't know where to put your attention. It can be overwhelming. So, I also with Bryce, and I also don't think it's a coincidence. Do we think he would have looked as sharp and as good as he did against Miami in the 2021 season opener had he started in the 2020 opener? Would that have been maybe? It is possible. I think he was a good player, but I think him sitting for a year, the no pressure, acclimating to college, getting comfortable with his teammates. I think that all can really help you. I'm not advocating, hey, don't play Keelon Russell. If he proves to be the best guy, plenty of guys also step on the field from day one and they can handle it. And so it's not a big deal. I'm just saying there are some benefits. Like, if you see him not starting game one or you don't see him starting year one, I don't think there's any reason to like freak out and say it's a bad thing. If you can manage to win football games with him on the bench and allow him to develop, that's only going to help you, in my opinion.
Yeah. I do think the other part of it too that is interesting, I'm a big proponent of who's the greatest quarterback of all time in the NFL?
I mean, it depends on what you want to go with. Tom Brady's the one.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean,
did he start day one?
No, he didn't.
No.
Aaron Rodgers didn't.
That's the next one to say. Aaron Rodgers did. You look at recency in the SEC. I'll tell you who's the best quarterback in your opinion that's come through Alabama before so far?
Probably Tua.
Did he start day one?
No, he was coming off a big injury though. But that is correct.
Right.
And I mean, one of the best quarterbacks from the state of Alabama in history was Phillip Rivers. Once again, didn't start. Drew Brees was the starter when he got to San Diego. So, yeah, that's a great point, man.
Tua, Bryce, Mack, those are all Heisman level seasons, and they didn't start day one. I'll give you another one that I thought, in the recency bias of how he performed this year, I get it. But last year, Carson Beck was a phenomenal quarterback, and he sat for 2 years, and Georgians were going 13-1, and like an eyelash short of winning probably a three-peat for a natty if it weren't for Alabama. So I think there's such a case. The one that gives me pause on it is Nico this year. I thought he would be much better than he was in year one. It's a different kind of offense, and there's so many things that you have to be good at. Like, we might have just seen something with Tennessee where it's like you just have to be a Hendon Hooker level of talent where you're that accurate on the deep ball for it to have that kind of success, which whatever. But I think there's so many great cases to be made. Jordan Love currently in the NFL, like, that's
Yep.
a guy that sat after like for a while and all of that. So I think there's such a case we made for it, and I hope that we get to see it. Again, my fear comes from the day and age of part of it also is being a prisoner of the moment in terms of we're sitting smack dab in the middle of portal season just ending, or maybe it didn't end. I don't really effing know at this point. Every single time I think it ends, it doesn't. It's like the most toxic relationship I've ever been in, and that's really saying something. It's just never over. It's just never over, Clint. But I think
Is 5 days after your bowl game, the window closes for players to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go and get somebody whenever your heart desires, pretty much.
Yeah, but also there's like something else that's open to like January 24th or something.
It's January for the teams that are making the national championship who are playing on what, the 20th?
I don't think it's that. It's something else. It's like a Cyber Monday type deal. It's like, oh, you missed out on Black Friday? Here's Cyber Monday. So I think you get everyone at a 60% discount as long as you order them with your Amazon Prime account. So,
wow.
Yeah, just a drone dropping off a 4-star quarterback. Just perfect.
Whoa. 5-star. Come on.
5-star quarterback. There you go. No, I think that's where part of it comes from, where it's like you're right in the middle of that, and there's so many kids that leave, and that's there's no position that's more important in all of sports than quarterback, and having a quarterback that is of this level of talent, you just desperately want to make sure you keep them on the roster. I do think that he will stay. I'm just saying that that's where the concern on my end comes from. But like I said, I'm also fascinated to see where it comes from. Is there another guy like we'll wrap up because we get to do a shorter show today, but like the other things that have happened this week, and I'm sure you and Mick have talked about it and talked about it on the shows throughout the week. I think that Bama has become such a desperation, like get your licks in now because they're seemingly down. And the day we're recording this is a year to the day when Nick Saban retired. And now that he's gone, isn't ruling comfortable with an iron fist. I think people are like just begging for Bama to be average or below average or something like that. They've done a tremendous job keeping kids from entering the draft, and you get back 11 starters, I believe the number is from this last year's team. And I think that says a ton about a first-year coach and the culture he's trying to build. That from the outside looking in, people are trying to make it a punchline, and he's not that great, and all that kind of stuff. But I think that Bama, especially this week, the amount of people you had coming back. LT Overton's a guy that had a first-round grade from multiple people and projections, and those things could be wrong. We've seen, NFL mock drafts that aren't always accurate. Matt Miller getting dragged this week because of his Derrick Henry take. But like that's a guy that had a first-round grade. There's several others that could have. Parker Brailsford's a guy that I think will play in the league for a while because of how talented he is. He's coming back. Them being able to hold on to different players, I thought this week especially has been very, very impressive and a great sign for where the program's headed.
If Parker Brailsford elected to pull a Carson Beck, don't just forego the NFL draft for another year or delay it, enter the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
If, Jeremy Bernard, if LT Overton, Jaden Roberts, probably like a late day 2 guy, in my opinion. Now, the injuries could have teams concerned. That might be a big reason for him to come back from a talent standpoint. It's like if these guys were entering the portal, where would they be ranked in the portal?
Right.
And so if they were at a different school and you were losing all these caliber of players to the NFL draft, but these caliber of players that they're keeping were at another school and they're entering the portal and you're handing them fat checks, everybody would be thrilled. You're signing everybody. You're getting this guy who was projected to be a first-round pick that elected to come back for another year. So it's like they invested their money on that side of it, but because it's not new, it's not different. It's like, great. Well, we were able to keep him, but I want to stack on top of him. I want more. And it's like, I get that logic because it's like LT Overton being on the roster, Jaden Roberts being on the roster, Parker Brailsford, Jeremy Bernard, Keon Sabb, Deontay Lawson,
Keon Sabb, man.
All of these guys, it resulted in 4 losses in the minds of Alabama fans. So I don't just want them. They're great. We want to keep the good players, but we want to stack on top of that. Well, they've done that through the number 2 recruiting class.
Right.
I don't know how many of those guys will be ready to start from day one, but I think they will have some contributors there. But they've also, in my opinion, added some pretty good players out of the portal. and they've identified some key needs, and I think it's going to help them too. So I'm right there with you. I think it's a different approach. It's not one that's going to be overly popular, but let's just find out where things are at next year. I mean, you have to. So that's my
think
thoughts.
the thing, like in the portal especially, like the running back kid you got from Louisiana, not a sexy pick. You know, the Utah State kid is a guy that ends up in South Carolina, and that kid is the number 4 running back in the portal and all that kind of stuff. And but here's like from one side of it is you need bodies. Do you remember the 2021 season? Everyone talks about the Mechie and JMO injuries, but like you had Brian Robinson and half of Trey Sanders ending that season. Like for real, like you lost McMillan, you lost him, you lost I forgot, was it Keelon Robinson or whoever else? Like you lost somebody. It felt like every 3 to 4 games for the year throughout the season.
You had Christian Leary, a true freshman receiver, playing running back, and you had Demoy Kennedy, a linebacker playing running back.
So at the very least, you need bodies. And I'll give you an example of that too. This year with Georgia, Georgia is one of the best programs in the country. They've recruited arguably better than anybody, and they've also been able to retain all their talent because they haven't lost a ton to the portal over the last couple of years, especially any great players. They haven't gone in like, you know, in bulk or anything like that. Now, you watching this year, they didn't have a single scholarship running back that was able to play in all 14 games for them. Nate Frazier, the freshman, was the closest. He had 13. ETN played, I think, 9 or 10. But you had Roderick Robinson playing. I think it was like they had 2, Branson Robinson and Roderick Robinson. One of them played 2 games. One of them played 6. But you saw the deterioration of that depth chart kind of go there. So you need bodies there. I think that's a good get. I'll tell you the other thing that from me being the ultimate optimist out of this, which is not something I usually am, but being the ultimate optimist out of this, one team, an example I'll give you that I think that like that you could potentially make the comparison, seeing how they do next year. The guys that you were able to keep out of the portal and keep out of the NFL draft that we just talked about. One of the things that is not talked nearly enough about with Ohio State is they spent a ton of money in the portal. They went and got Quinshon Judkins. They went and got Caleb Downs. They spent a ton of money in the portal. They already have like one of the best rosters. The players they were able to keep out of last year's NFL draft, the 2 defensive ends and edge rushers, Travion Henderson at running back, several Emeka Ibuka. Like, I don't know if all those guys would have been first round talent, but I do know that going into the season they had like 7 or 8 projected first rounders. They're going to have, you know, around 5 or so projected going once their season's over. But the guys they were able to keep out of the portal and out of the NFL draft that came back for another year, that's one of the reasons they've had the best defense in the country this year and one of the best, you know, offenses and explosive offenses at times. Like, that's what Bama could potentially have, especially with the guys at the positions of need and that are like most important in football, which nowadays is talking about your left tackle, Caden Proctor's coming back, your defensive line and edge rushers, and obviously the quarterback position as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, in Ohio State, a lot of people are going to be like, well, that's Ohio State's what I want. Ohio State, they kept the guys on their roster,
right?
The key guys, they kept them out of the draft. They had one of the better recruiting classes in the country, and they went and they signed Julian Sayin and Caleb Downs, and you know, all of these different players, Quinshon Judkins. We want that. You know, we got 2 of those elements, but we're not keeping that. We don't have that third leg, and it's like, man, just understand they were able to sign one of the better recruiting classes.
Right.
Let's find out what happens after the college football playoff for them. You know, a lot of that young talent with them, you know, are they going to stick around? I mean, we'll see. But I mean, I do think Ohio State's working with a little bit more as far as NIL, you know, on that front too. So yeah, they're going to have an advantage, but I just don't think it's this lopsided. Alabama's not doing anything. They're doing everything they can. Chris, I appreciate you.
Yeah, man.
This has been fun. You know, hopefully it's a productive conversation. A lot of people, we're starting the quarterback talk early. That's why we're doing this. It's going to be an interesting off season. Quarterback battle off seasons. A couple of years ago, it became one of the most toxic things I've ever seen. Hopefully it's not that again.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it was unfair to both players, and there's still people that hold resentment against Ty Simpson for stuff fans said about Jalen Milroe, or you know, vice versa. And you don't want that. Alabama's got a good quarterback room. They're all capable of winning the job. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to continue to talk about it here at the Cover Crimson YouTube channel and also at covercrimson.com. Got some big plans coming. Logo change. Chris. I don't know if you noticed, but a little bit of a logo change over there on
I
the
like
message
that.
board. It's gonna
Okay.
be pretty dope. We appreciate everybody being along for the ride. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
This has been incredible. The growth that we're seeing month to month, incredible. And we're only really getting started, man. So appreciate you. You know, we will do this again soon. Hopefully, we can talk a little bit about these 2 college football playoff games, and then hopefully the national championship preview before the next game. It won't be like, I mean, fans are going to be super interested in hearing some all-out preview, but I just want to have a discussion about how we think these last 3 games with the Final Four and the final game have turned out. But appreciate you as always. Appreciate everybody for listening in, and we will talk to you guys